One of the biggest food trends, I think, in 2025, and it's definitely going to be a factor in 2026, is the impact of GLP-1s and the consumer's use of them. And Rabobank has put out a paper discussing this entitled Every Bite Counts, GLP-1s and the Future of Food. Here to discuss it is one of the authors is JP Frossard. He is an analyst with consumer goods at Rabobank based out of New York City. How are we doing today, JP?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Now, some of our audience may have heard of GLP-1s, but I guess let's start off there. What exactly are they?
Well, I think a big chunk of our audience has heard about that because the awareness about this type of drugs, that again, they were not talking about them last year, but now over 60% of Americans and Canadians, and now more and more Europeans are learning about this new drug. So those drugs they were created first to treat diabetes too, and then they realized that they have effects over weight losses. So it's a big market for these pharmaceutical companies. So they launch new products, and that's we talk about that in our report. We have like other products in the pipeline, and they are targeting exactly people who, of course, people that are living with obesity, and but also more and more people who just to lose a few pounds or
Yeah.
like they are going from a drug that was meant to treat obesity, which is a worldwide problem, to people who want to lose a few pounds and feel better about it.
Yeah. Any idea, an update on how many, what percent of the population in North America is consuming or using GLP-1s?
Yeah, so we in the US specifically, the number we're talking about is like 12-13% are using those type of drugs. Again, they come in different shapes and formats, and they're usually a weekly shot. And today we had the approval of daily pills for
Yes.
to be sold in the US. Um, that's a big thing because people don't want to have a weekly shot. They'd rather to stick to the daily pills. So today the number is 12, and 12% are have used or are using these drugs. If you look at about households, which is a big deal as well, because if one person in the household is using these drugs, it may affect what you're going to put on the table, what's going to serve to other people in the same household. This number, according to other sources, this is Circana specifically, is 23% of households have
Wow.
people using this drug. So but again, it's still a minor, like minority number, 12%, but it's growing and it's growing fast. If you had this conversation around this time of the year last year, we're going to be like single digits for sure.
Yeah, and it's still just beginning, but it is having a major impact. You mentioned the food industry, the adoption of GLP-1s represents both disruption and opportunity. So what kind of impact is it having on the food industry?
Well, the first impact is people on those drugs, they eat less. I mean, that's the purpose, right? We're going to cut calories. Um, the way these drugs work, you feel full for longer and you don't have that craving of having that extra drink or that snack in the middle of the afternoon. So the first impact, pretty simple. We eat less calories. The second impact is less quantitative and more qualitative. Once you eat less, you become a bit more careful. Well, like what you're gonna actually eat. You need to eat something, right? So what you're gonna choose. So there are some studies, and namely the study from the Cornell University that said people are cutting on some, let's say, empty calories, things that have like high calorie but don't add much nutrients. I'm talking about alcohol. I'm talking about fried foods or salty snacks, or even very like desserts or bakery snacks. People are. I'm not saying they are cutting totally. I'm just saying that they're cutting more or those type of products, and they are focusing on proteins and fiber foods because that
Yeah,
helps you to feel full longer.
I have a friend that has been, is a big proponent of GLP-1s and has been taking them. And one of the things that he talks about is he's just lost all desire to taste sugar. Sugary snacks are out, something that he consumed a lot of previously. He loved them. And he talks about how now in his thirst, his quench for protein is he'll say like, I've never consumed so much protein in my life, which is one of the reasons why we're seeing a lot of consumer goods, food in the middle of the grocery aisle having like protein all of a sudden placed on the box. Everybody's trying to drive increased grams of protein right now in the food industry.
Yeah, that's how GLP-1 meets other trends, right? Because the protein mania we're seeing nowadays, like more and more, like we have like protein shakes with 30, 35 grams of protein. That was we didn't have that like a couple of years ago. So that's where this trend meets other trends. I like to say that GLP-1 it's important, it's relevant, but it it combined, it has like a catalyst effect with other trends. One of them is protein. Yes, Americans, especially Americans, they have this view that more protein the merrier. We like scientists would debate that, but we see protein as something good in comparison to carbs or fat, right? So like we focus on protein. We are seeing more and more people adding on top of protein content, also fiber content, especially people on those drugs, they are very concerned about the amount of fiber they take. So because, and that comes other trends, especially about natural foods and gut health, or we are talking about MAHA in the United States. So
Yes.
people are like focusing more on when I say a catalyst effect, I'm talking about exactly about that, how the GLP-1 with the all the conversation, ultra processed foods and make America health again, they all have this combined effect towards like more animal protein, like dairy, lean cuts of meat, and also against ultra processed foods that are usually low in protein, low in fiber, and high in sugar, fat, and salt.
So you could say good for the outside aisles of the grocery store, not as good for the
Exactly.
middle aisles of the grocery store.
Let's talk about bakery because we all think about, okay, bakery is going to be affected by this. And again, I spend a lot of my time here talking about bakery. If you see the perimeter of the store, there's growth. There is growth in the perimeter of the store because again, you may eat less, you have has less cravings for carbs or even like portions in the breakfast is going to be small. But you say, you know what, I'm gonna try something different. I'm gonna have brioche or croissant. I'm gonna add value to my to that amount. Can be a smaller amount, but I want to add value to that eating occasion. And you're seeing growth in the end of the store, and some of this growth is coming at the expense of the center of the store. Also because consumers want something different as well.
Now you mentioned like big news today that now there's going to be a daily pill or it has been approved. The other thing I've heard a little bit about is what microdosing could look like going forward for some people. Did that get mentioned at all in your paper?
No, we don't go that specific because again, that's a very medical
Okay.
and subjective discussions. I mean, talking to people, I mean, again, friends that has been on these drugs. I mean, some people start with higher doses and then go to micro doses just to maintain. Even the pharmaceutical companies, they are saying that you can combine injections in the couple of first of months or weeks and do like a maintenance on lower doses on this newly approved oral pills. So again, that's something people need to discuss with the their doctors and come up with a solution. I don't think there's one size fits all here.
Yeah.
What we do see is that this is becoming not something not only for people living with obesity, which again is already a huge milestone, but already it's going to other types of demographics, people who really want to go to their ideal weight, and that may extend the penetration of these drugs to a much larger audience in North America, and as we say in the report, growing very fast in Europe as well.
What's the is there pushback? Like are there potential consequences that some companies or maybe the medical profession is concerned about? Did that come up at all in your research?
No, like our report is mostly focused on the consequence for food. Of course, I would say if there is some sort of pushback, is because some sort of like side effects, but we haven't seen that much.
Yep.
We're seeing a growing base of users for these drugs, which has been, and we think that this 12% number that I mentioned is going to probably become larger because these drugs are become more accessible. We're seeing like new distribution channels. For instance, Amazon partnering with Weight Watchers on the distribution of these drugs. We have seen compound pharmacies like making these drugs more affordable. Politicians here in the highest office in North America try to add that to insurance and make those more affordable.
Yes.
So again, there's something new uh, and growing fast. And it's a medical discussion of how people are gonna achieve that. But I think that the main takeaway for us in the food industry is to look at that very carefully, because that may affect volumes and what people actually will eat more and less.
Yeah, I was listening to a radio program the other day, and they were talking about how some restaurants. I think the example they gave was Olive Garden, which is well known for its portion sizes. And one of the things that they were doing was they were offering a piece of the menu where it was much smaller portions than what people are now. It was kind of pushed from an affordability standpoint. Here's a cheaper dish for you to buy. Again,
Mm-hmm.
trends meeting other trends. But at the same time, it was very appealing to people that were looking for smaller portions that were maybe consuming like a GLP-1 that we were talking about. I'm curious if one of the next movement here is for a lot more restaurants in the food service trade to offer smaller portions in America, where portion sizes of restaurants are well known to be larger than other areas of the world.
Yeah, I think that's yes. Smaller portions are giving, like, people don't want to waste food, right? So if you, and also affordability, if you can make like something more catered for this audience, but it's not only about quantity, it's all about giving options to consumers to choose. Like for instance, like ciders. Like if you may you may want the same burger, but instead of the fries, you want some veggies or something different. I think it's about giving options to consumers, because this is something very subjective, and each person in each different occasion they're gonna feel like more eating something, more of something, or less of something else. So it's one challenge, but also an opportunity
Yeah.
for restaurants as well, to attract those guys by giving them more options, and also of course trying to understand how they can serve like smaller portions, but also like most customized.
And of course, we're going to continue to see more innovation in this space. The next generations of these drugs that will take this even further. To wrap up, I guess where does this go? What is some of the outcomes we'll be talking about in a year when we talk about GLP-1s and the trend of increased consumption of these drugs and improved technology?
I think you're gonna see more options, more like foods catered for this audience. But of course, I think that all food companies, they are spending some time right now with their R&D to understand not only size, not only more protein, more fiber, but to understand how those drugs affect our taste. And there are some studies on this regard. Maybe you don't need our cookies as sweet as before. Maybe my saltness perception is different, or like for people on those drugs. So I think there's a lot of challenge of rethinking um, the formulations of goods out there, and maybe creating lines not only for GLP-1s. They are doing that the same things for Maha, and making foods less processed with different ingredients. So I think all this trends goes together and give a lot of challenges and opportunities for the industry. Especially, I mean, we didn't talk about briefly about that, but also volumes are flat to say slightly negative in this year, because consumers are concerned on the cost of living, and they are less keen to try new products. So I think that they have a lot on their plate right now, and to bring new products with different formulations that attract the curiosity of their consumer that are spending a lot of money and time going to these drugs to to have it, like to change their body today, to change their diets. So there's an opportunity on the side, and for restaurants, the same thing. They are also losing traffic is negative right now, so they can add new portions to attract consumers that decide to be home, and so they can be aware of what they are eating.
I mean, we've been talking lots about food, but the soft drink industry has also, this has got to be really impacting them.
Yes, it's that's not something I spend a lot of time looking at. We have like our beverage teams that knows much more about that. But again, look at the so much innovation we have in beverage right now.
Yeah.
We talked about gut health before, and now we have like big movements of, for instance, PepsiCo making acquisitions to different types of soda that adds probiotics and has lower calories. So that's part of the innovation that we are already seeing beverage, but we expect to see across the food industry.
We've been talking to JP Frossard. He's an analyst in consumer goods at Rabobank. He's based in New York City, but you know what? He was so kind to join us. He's home for the holidays in Brazil. And JP, I will let you get back to that beautiful scenery that is behind you and enjoy yourself. Okay. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Happy holidays.